Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraya. So, Hare Krishna. Welcome to this evening, where I will speak, as I was requested, on how Krishna consciousness is a science. Of course, it's a very vast subject matter, and I will only be able to scratch on the surface of this subject. But nevertheless, I will try to give certain food for thought for you students. Actually, I read Bhagavad Gita for the first time in my life in 1980, the time when many of you were not born yet. And the first impression which I had, and of course, at that time I was very far away from any sort of spirituality. I was a scientist, I was an atheist. Not only was I an atheist, my parents were atheists, my grandparents were atheists. So I was a traditional atheist, at least in the third generation. And from my childhood, I was taught that there is no God, and that we are human beings. We went to space and we didn't see God, so that's a proof that He is not there. So, yes, I was in life as being a research scientist. I was very much fascinated by the molecular biology, genetics, and I was doing some sort of genetical engineering in the very inceptional stage, of course, at that time. And later it became the genome project, where they deciphered the whole genome of the human being. My scientific guide was one of the pioneers in this field. But when I read Bhagavad Gita by some coincidence, of course we know there is no coincidence. It's just a name for some higher science. I was struck with the notion that Bhagavad Gita is not just some religious book. That this is a book which is talking about truth, and talking about truth in a very scientific way. One of the most striking characteristics of Bhagavad Gita is that Krishna doesn't say, if you don't believe me, you will go to hell. Krishna doesn't make all these famous religious claims, just believe in me and then you will be saved. No, Krishna says, do whatever you like, but think first and then do. Krishna is trying to impress upon us that we should think deeply about the nature of reality and not rush into making decisions, because the consequences of our choices and decisions can be very grave. And Krishna provides a system, a very rational and liberal system. And he says, you may accept it, you may reject it, it's up to you. You're free to do it. You're a free citizen, no problem. You're a student. Nobody can deprive you your rights to accept or reject this. But you think. So that's exactly the proposition of science. Science doesn't insist that you have to believe into something. Of course, science is also based on beliefs. Science is based on certain axioms, and axioms by definition is something you have to accept. Axioms is not provable. You cannot prove axioms. Axioms you have to accept, but at the same time, axioms, can be rationally understood. But while accepting certain propositions, after accepting certain propositions or certain suppositions or certain premises, then you have to see how, by accepting these propositions, the reality matches to the picture which is derived from this. So that's what science is. Certain things in science are not provable. Science cannot prove, science cannot even define what is time. Time is just there. We take it for granted. Science cannot define what is space. Space is there. Science cannot define what is energy. Science cannot define what is mass. Can any one of you give definition of mass? What is mass? You can only put it in a scale and, compare it with some, some piece of metal which is stored somewhere in France. That's the definition, or maybe not in France. I don't know, where is it? Greenwich, somewhere there. So, you just accept certain things, take it for granted, and then from there you develop the system which is being proved as practical, as reasonable, as logical. So, and basically, that's what it is. This is exactly the case with Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says there is soul, and that's it, bas. You cannot do anything about it. You cannot argue about it. You either accept it or reject it. But you try to accept it and see what happens. How, if you accept it, how the picture of the world will become very logical. So that's exactly the impression which I had when I read Bhagavad Gita. It's a science. It's a science, but science which is based on completely different set of premises. Not the science which I know, not the science which I follow, not the science which I pursue. It's a science, but it's a different science. And of course, even though I was moved, as Suvarnaguru Hari said, I was moved profoundly. I was moved by Bhagavad Gita, but I was not in a hurry to believe in it. I didn't have compelling reason to believe in it. And what I did, I started comparing the science and explanatory power of science with the proposed worldview which was given in Bhagavad Gita. And science can explain something, but science cannot explain many things which are there. So I was trying to see which system can explain more of the reality. One of the greatest mysteries of science is the nature of consciousness. Scientists, material scientists, take it for granted that consciousness is somehow or other, is epiphenomenon, is some phenomenon which is coming from the electric impulses from the brain. We have neurons, and there are around 80 billion neurons in your little brain. And this, each and every neuron can make a connection with around 1,000 or 2,000 other neurons, and then somehow or other, like genies from the Aladdin's lamp, the consciousness pops out. But starts with the electric impulses. The electric impulses goes up. Now you see. I see you, I see this picture, I see this. The point is that even though the neuroscientists, they know how the brain works, they know great details of how the brain works, they cannot make explanation of the most simple conscious experience. It's one thing if the electric impulses are, shrieking there and here and there, and neurons. But how after that, there are many electric impulses there, but nobody is conscious just making these electric impulses. How this notion that I see comes about. And not only I see this color, and I see this, and I taste this, taste. How this comes? This is called, the scientists call it hard problem of consciousness. And not without reason, they call it hard problem of consciousness. They call it hard problem of consciousness because they cannot figure out how is it. The consciousness is something very mysterious, and they say somehow or other it appears. There are different theories how consciousness appears from this electric activity of cells, but actually, ultimately, in all these theories, the ultimate end is that, some magic wound should be there. Somehow or other. Some say, they're called, what they call, I don't remember. Some say that there is some consciousness even in atoms, and when many atoms come together, then the consciousness appears. Some say some other things. So all these things are not very easily to be proven. And so many other things. I was a scientist. I mean, I'm still a scientist, but I'm a completely different scientist. I'm from a different academy of science. So what I want to say is that I was trying to compare this system with another system. And I knew very well that in whatever system you accept, you will have to believe certain things. Certain things you will have to accept. So I was trying to compare these two systems, and ultimately I came to a conclusion that, the Bhagavad Gita works better. That Bhagavad Gita is much more complete and much more comprehensive system of knowledge than the existent system of knowledge which is there. And it can explain more phenomena in more coherent way, in more cohesive way, in a more harmonious and more rational even way than the modern science. So that was my first impression after first reading of Bhagavad Gita. And there was a long internal search for truth when I was trying to understand how it works and what it works. So that's a little introduction to this topic, that I will be talking about science, but a completely different science, not the same science which we used to. But I will try to explain, how this is a great science of consciousness. And interestingly enough, there are scientists, very few of them, and they're very advanced scientists. One of them is Donald Hoffman, who say, after he's a neuroscientist, and he is the specialist on visual perception. His topic, his subject matter is how the visual perception take place, how we can see. And he, after many years, decades of studying this, he actually says that I came to a conclusion that consciousness is fundamental. that this is something which you cannot question, and consciousness is not a result of this brain activity. It's fundamental. In fact, the brain activity is a result of consciousness. And that's, you can choose the way of Donald Hoffman and, spend few decades on studying this and come to this conclusion, or you can just read Bhagavad Gita and come to this conclusion immediately. It's a shortcut. But ultimately, if you're honest, if you're really searching for truth, you will come to this conclusion. You will reject all this reductionist and physicalist concocted idea of the nature of reality, because consciousness is something fundamental. Consciousness is more fundamental, according to the science of Bhagavad Gita, than the space and time. Consciousness is before that. Consciousness is the source of everything, and it's a fact. The space, time, and everything else which we see is a result of consciousness. But it doesn't mean that it is just a subjective reality, that there's no objective reality. No. Bhagavad Gita is not, teaching some stupid modern ideas that this is just imagination and illusion. No, it's an illusion, but it's a different kind of illusion. It's a very tangible illusion, unfortunately, which is very difficult to destroy. But again, it's a big subject matter. I will take a simple subject matter. I will take the subject matter of the nature of soul, which is the atom of consciousness, and I will try to explain how Bhagavad Gita tackles this particular problem. So I will read one verse from Bhagavad Gita because being the spiritual scientist, we have to quote the authorities. Like in normal science, you have to quote this article from the Science Journal or from Nature or from some other reputed journals. And of course, they always change and they always give different ideas. Bhagavad Gita is a scientific book which is 5,000 years old. And there is not a single change in this theory within 5,000 years. So let's see what Krishna says. We have to rely on something which is very authoritative, that is the words of Krishna. I will read the verse and little part of the some part of the purport. It's a very long purport. Let's chant together. Avinashi tu tad vidhi. This is 217 of Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 17th verse. Yana sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartumarhasi. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yana sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartumarhati. So Krishna makes a very interesting proposition. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. So the consciousness, your conscious experience, the fact that you're experiencing, you're sensing, you're seeing, you're smelling, you're touching, so that ability which pervades all the body, because all the body has this ability to experience something which is a great mystery for the science, something which science cannot explain. This very fact, Krishna says, that this consciousness which pervades your body is indestructible. It's eternal. He says it's fundamental. It's actually the same conclusion which Donald Hoffman comes. It's something more fundamental than time and space, something from which everything else emanates. And Krishna says, Avinashi tu tad vidhi. You should know, tad vidhi, that this is Avinashi, which is indestructible, yana sarvam idam tatam, which pervades idam, this body, by which all this body is pervaded. Yana sarvam idam tatam. Vinasham avyayasya. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. Nakaschit kartumarhati. Vinasham, you cannot destroy the agent which is experiencing. You can destroy the body. You can destroy certain functions of your experience, but you cannot destroy the experiencing object, which is the soul, which is the atom of consciousness. So that's the axiom of spiritual science. That's a very important axiom, and Srila Prabhupada explains very beautifully how this axiom, even though it's not provable, and many people would reject it from the beginning, still it's very plausible. So let's read how Prabhupada beautifully explains this. In this verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what spread all over the body, it is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body, in a part or as a whole. The spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in science. Shveta Upanishad confirms, Balagra Shata Bhagasya. If you take one bow, little balagra, little part, shatabhagasya, shatadha kalpitasya cha, and then divide it into 100 parts, and then divide it again 100 parts. So 1/10,000 parts of the upper portion of the hair. Bhagajiva savigya. Basically, Sachaitanya kalpate. Basically, it is said that it's atomic. It's very, very small. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom, smaller than the material atoms. And such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body. And the influence of such spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. Srila Prabhupada explains this. You take little tiny part of some medicine, and immediately it has an effect all over the body, or some poison or whatever. This effect of the spirit soul is felt all over the body consciousness, and it is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In the Mundaka Upanishad, and this is very important verse which I want to explain. In the Mundaka Upanishad, the measurement of the atomic soul is further explained. Esho anur atma chetasa viditavyo yasmin pranah panchadha samvivesha pranaishchitam sarvamatam pragyanam yasmin vishuddhe vibhavat esha atma. The soul is the atomic size is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air, prana, pana, vyana, samana, and udana, is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. So I will stop here and I will chant a little prayer. Yantah pravishya mama vachim mamam prasuptam sanjivayata kila shakti adah svadhamnam. Anyamscha hasta charana shravanat vagadim pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam svasyastu vishvasya kalah prasidatam deyantu bhutani shivam mithodya manascha badram bachata tadoksha jayeshitam no matirabhyahaitu ki. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Of course, sometimes devotees, they think they need some more higher subject matter. Please tell me about pastimes of Krishna and Radharani. The 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I know. But actually, if you don't understand very clearly the science of consciousness, you will just mistaken the pastimes of Krishna and Radharani, and you will think, why don't I pick up some Radharani somewhere? Why should I read about Krishna's pastimes? Let me do my own pastimes. So we have to start with the proper place. And the proper place is to understand the nature of the soul, is to understand the nature of conscious experience, and to understand how I can really experience my soul. We have to clearly understand why at this moment of time I'm so much engrossed with the body, why I'm so much dependent on the body, why I'm so conditioned, and why I cannot really feel as the soul. Why I feel that when the body will be dead, I will also be dead, I will not exist anymore. That's the common experience which we all have. Why do I afraid of death? That's this fear of death is very real thing in our consciousness. If I'm eternal, if the soul is eternal, then why all these things take place in my consciousness? And what am I supposed to do to understand deeper? And not only understand, but to have the realization that I am eternal spirit soul. Prabhupada gives common sense logic. He says, yes, we know what is the consciousness, and it cannot be simulated by electric impulses. Like now there is in the material world, there is a huge project going on, very rich people who want to become immortal. They have project which is called, what's called? Anyway, they by the year 2045, they want to make sure that they can be immortal. So how do they can be immortal? They can now, they do so many things. They edit genes, and then they can upload the content of your consciousness into computer, and then they can simulate your body and make some robot, and then after placing this consciousness from the computer, they put it into the body, and here you are, you will be immortal. So many rich people, they put billions of dollars into this project because they want to be immortal. This quest of immortality is the eternal quest of human beings. Hiranyakashipu wanted to be immortal, and he invested some of his living energy into this project. These billionaires, they're investing their money into the same problem, and the result will be the same. Nrsimhadev will take care of it. So, but they have great hopes. Now they have hopes that, we can take the content of my memory, put it into computer, and then we can make some, then we can have a 3D printer, and by this 3D printer we can print some body, and we can take this from the computer, put it there, and here I am again living young and energetic. Or they're speculating that there is some holographic figures, and we will do some holographic figures, and I will be just a holographic figures with some electronic memory in my brain. And so many things. And and then if you're afraid that you will not survive that long, because many of these billionaires, they're already old, and 2045, it's another 20 years. So they say, no problem, there is a science of cryogenics, when you can put your body into refrigerator and it will be preserved, and by the year 2045 we will put it back into this how you call this, electric wave, oven. And after being frozen, you will become again, and then we will do this. It only, you can do it if you want. You can, you only need $200,000 to pay, and then your body will be preserved into this big refrigerator, and hopefully will be revived after some time. But probably it will be quite rotten. But anyway, they have these strange ideas. Why? Why do they have these ideas? Why do they pay this enormous amount of money? Because they want to be eternal, but also because they make this mistake. They think consciousness is just the activity of the brain. They think consciousness is just my memory. They somehow rather mix the consciousness, which is not reducible, which is fundamental, which is completely different, from which Bhagavad Gita starts. They mix it with some activities of some material atoms and some material cells and electric impulses, and some ions going here and there, and all kinds of stuff. No, this is the mechanism. Consciousness is completely different. And we have to first understand this. Then only we can understand super consciousness. Until we understand the atomic consciousness, little consciousness, which we are, we can never imagine or hope to understand super consciousness, which is Krishna. And if we don't understand super consciousness of which is Krishna, how we can understand the pastimes of the super consciousness with his super energy, which is Srimati Radharani? You will only be mistaken. So first you start with this, understand that I'm consciousness, I'm eternal. The fact that I'm conscious now is the proof that I'm eternal. Krishna exactly says this, you're conscious, it means you're not material. Consciousness is not material. Consciousness is not reducible to the material activity which is taking part in the body, because it's a completely different, very fundamental part of the reality. Most fundamental part of the reality. And in these verses where Krishna explains, Srila Prabhupada first explains that the consciousness, individual consciousness, is atomic by science. It's atomic, and therefore it's indestructible. That's a very important principle of Nyaya. Nyaya, Vedic logic, says that in this world, whatever has parts is destructible by the very fact that it has parts. Because it has parts, it will be destroyed sooner or later. And our body has many parts. And that's the proof that the body will die. King Kalashikar says, what is it? Edam shariram satasangis jarjaram patatyavasyam. That this body will definitely fall down, that this body will be destroyed. Idam shariram satasandi jarjaram, because there are so many sandhis. There are so many different joints, and these sandhis, they connect different parts. So sooner or later, one after another, all these sandhis will be just destroyed. You will find out that there is one sandhi less. Like sometimes you find out that there is one tooth less. So this is the process which is taking part in the body, and the body is doomed. Body cannot be eternal, but Nyaya says that there are only two things which are eternal. One is atomic. If it's atomic, it's eternal because it cannot be destroyed. It's too small to be destroyed. It has no parts. And another one is unlimited. Unlimited things, they also don't have parts, and they're also not destroyed. So Krishna says, and Srila Prabhupada explains, that the soul, the individual soul, is atomic, and therefore it cannot be destroyed. And super soul, Krishna himself, is unlimited, and therefore he cannot be destroyed. So there are two eternal things. Everything else is not eternal. And Srila Prabhupada explains this point. He says that the soul is atomic, and then he explains very interestingly by quoting this verse from Mundaka Upanishad, which I will explain in details, how the soul is interacting with the body. It's one thing to believe that soul exists. As Prabhupada says, any sane man can understand that when the body dies, something is missing. It's not that, some people think, you add something to this body and the body will be survived again. No, something fundamental is missing. The soul is leaving the body. Those people who had near-death experience, they explain it very vividly. They said, we have seen the body, we have seen the nurses and doctors who were trying to revive this body. They can explain in all details what they were doing. They can explain in all details what they were telling each other. Sometimes, again, scientists, they try to explain all this near-death experiences, the agony of the brain, which somehow or other creates the illusion of still existing because the brain wants to survive, and then he creates this illusion. But there are so many near-death experiences which prove completely against this hypothesis. First of all, people, it's not an illusion because people really, being unconscious, they really know what's going on, who is talking what, they can explain when they're coming back, and they can explain something which is outside, which they didn't have a chance to see. There was one near-death experience which was experienced by one blind boy. He was blind from his birth, and then he has never seen anything in this world because he was born blind. When he had near-death experience, he started seeing, and he went and then he saw that there is some construction going on in the hospital, everything else, and then he came back into his blind body, and he explained everything which he has seen being outside of the body. which he couldn't imagine. His brain couldn't produce this, and very accurately he explained everything which was there, which was going on. So there are so many experiences of this, but again, Prabhupada says it's a common sense, but people, there is a very good saying that common sense is not very common. So, even though it's a common sense principle that there is conscious element in the body which is different from the body itself, and because it's different from the body itself, we can actually see and observe our body. Even in this life, we can look from the outside and observe. We can observe what is going on within our brain. We can estimate whether it's good or bad. We can control it to a certain extent. The consciousness is different from the body, but people have a very hard time to believe it. It's very difficult. They still don't believe it. They still think, no, consciousness is just produced from the brain. When the body is dead, I am dead. There is no chance. So let's see how this beautiful verse from Mundaka Upanishad explains this science. So it is said here that Eshonuratma Chetasa Veditavya. This Anuratma, this atomic Atma, this atomic soul, the word Atma in Sanskrit is very beautiful. The word Atma is derived from the verbal root dhatu at, which means to move. Atma means the active principle. The body is dead. The body is not really, active principle. The active principle of the body is the soul. It's something which moves itself and which pushes body to move. So the first thing which is said in this verse, Esho anur atma, Eshaha anur atma, chetasa viditavyaha. This atma should be known, has to be known, was to be known, Tavyaha, by the chetasa, by the consciousness. So the first thing which this verse says is that you should try to understand your soul. You should try to understand the nature, the indestructible nature of your consciousness. Esho anuratma. You should try, even though the soul is so subtle, even though the soul is so atomic and so small and so difficult to understand, it's understandable. It couldn't be understood. Veditavyaha means it was being understood, and it should be understood, and it could be understood. Yasmin pranah panchadatha panchadha samvishesha. So next it is said, very interestingly, please listen. This soul is placed into the 5 pranas, into the 5 life airs. And it is said, Pranayshchitam sarvam atam pragyanam. It is said that this prana is pervading all the body and all the chitta, the consciousness. It's very, very interesting. Please listen. And then I will explain the last line of this verse, and then we will in detail try to understand the concept behind it. Yasmin vishuddhi vibhavat esha atma. Then it is said that when your mind or chitta becomes clear, then you will see your atma. So very interestingly, the whole mechanism of our body, how our body works, how the perception works of this world, and how the consciousness works through the body and connects and interacts with the body is explained in this one verse. This one verse, is worth of, 100 Nobel Prizes. And nobody gave to Mundaka Upanishad even one Nobel Prize. But everything is there in just one verse. It is said, yes, the soul is atomic. It can be understood by our consciousness. So what first we have to understand about the consciousness, about the soul, is that the energy of the consciousness, the energy of the soul is being spread through prana. there is this life airs which are moving within our body. 5 life airs, prana, apana, samana, vyana, udana. These 5 life airs, they are spreading the conscious energy, spiritual energy, energy of the consciousness of the soul. The soul is atomic, it's localized in one place within the heart, but its energy, which is consciousness, spread all over the body. And it is spread all over the body through the channels, these pranic channels. In Upanishad, it is said that there are 72,000 channels of prana coming from the heart. Because the heart is the locality, locus of the soul. And from the heart, the consciousness is spread through these channels. And when we see, and because the consciousness of the soul, which is active principle of the body, is spread throughout these channels, only because of this, the body exists. We see, Ayurveda explains this, Chinese medicine explains this, when there is some blockages in these channels, then the blockages of these channels become the cause of diseases. Why? Because the energy of the soul, which actually makes the body alive, cannot go through these channels. Why cancer is there? Why so many other diseases are there? Ayurveda says it's very clear and very simple. Because all these subtle channels which are there in the body are being blocked. And because it's being blocked, because the energy doesn't move through these channels, then we can see that we can experience some pain. What is pain? Pain is actually the sign of blockage. Why yoga is doing all these kinds of postures? Because they want to clear these channels of the energy. Because they ultimately want to clear the consciousness of the soul, to see the soul. But for that, they have to work through this prana. They are cleaning the consciousness, chitta, through prana. And therefore these yogic postures are there. And you can actually judge how clean your body and how clean your consciousness by how flexible your body is. If your body is tough, is stiff, if it doesn't move, if you have pains, it means that there are so many blockages are there. And it basically means that consciousness doesn't penetrate there. And because it doesn't penetrate in this area, there is high probability, there is 100% probability that there will be some problem there. All the problems, all the diseases, ultimately because of only this one reason, because there are some blockages in the consciousness. Of course, medical sciences, I'm not going to compete with them. They will tell me, how much cholesterol you need to block your arteries. But arteries is just one sort of channels. Actually, Ayurveda says that there are system of 8 different, there are 8 different channeling systems which are ensuring the functioning of the body. But ultimately the energy of consciousness is being spread through these channels of prana. Because all the life airs, they also reside within the heart, and within the heart this atomic soul is there, and this atomic soul is giving this energy of consciousness to prana, and prana spreading this energy of consciousness all over the body, and therefore we can feel, like we all have this experience. If we sit for a long time in one posture, and somehow or other the pranic energy doesn't go there, then this area of our body becomes numb. There is no consciousness there. You can just, there is no feeling. Why? Because the consciousness of the soul does not penetrate there. And because, again, the consciousness of the soul is the basis of our life, that's why we have to really make sure that all the channels of our body are clean, and that the consciousness is flowing very freely within the body. And that's exactly what yoga means. But this verse of Mundaka Upanishad explains something much more subtle, much more beautiful even. So first, it is said that Atma, soul, is atomic. Then it is said that the energy of Atma spread all over the body, and only in this body, and that's why we cannot really feel what other people feel, that we cannot really have the conscious experience of other people. But then it is said very interestingly, pranais chitam sarvam otam prajnanam, not prajnanam, sorry. That chitta survived, the whole chitta, the consciousness, is interwoven by the by the threads of prana. So, we have soul, we have prana, and we have chitta. What is chitta? It is explained in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chitta is the material mechanism, but very subtle material mechanism. Soul is completely spiritual. Prana is rajasic by nature. It's moving, it spreads all over the body. Chitta is very sattvic. And chitta is the mirror by which we can see the reality. Chitta has the reflecting ability. Chitta reflects the reality as much as the screen of your phone reflects the reality. When you are in this camera mode, you can see, how the reality is reflected in this camera mode. So chitta is this screen of your consciousness. And the soul is seeing what is happening on the screen of your consciousness in chitta. And chitta, as it's said here, is interwoven, or it's completely, penetrated by the threads of prana. So in the same way, prana is called in 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, prana is called sutra tattva. Sutra means threads. So as much as this clause is the combination of threads going in two different directions, so in the same way, chitta, our consciousness, our ability to see the world, is interpenetrated by prana. And if our prana is contaminated, then our chitta is also, the reflecting ability of our chitta is also distorted, and therefore, we sometimes see very distorted picture of reality. When you have very high fever, typhoid fever, or when you take some drugs, you have all kinds of hallucinations, and you think, oh, I'm seeing high reality. No, you're just hallucinating. Why you're hallucinating? Because your prana is disturbed. And because your prana is disturbed, your chitta is disturbed. And because your chitta is disturbed, you see the distorted reflection of the image of reality in the chitta. And therefore, yogic procedure is very simple. First, you clean the channels by, doing all this kind of, miserable yoga exercise. Yeah. You're trying to clean the channels of your body by the mechanical means. You're just saying, I want my channels to be clean. You're doing all kinds of stuff, and it helps, it works. And then you try to do pranayama. First asana, then pranayama. First, of course, yama and niyam. By doing yama and niyam, by following some very strict principles, you stop the process of contamination of your channels. By stopping the process of contamination your channels, you have some hope, some dim hope that you will clean the channels. Because if you always contaminate the channels by eating all kinds of non-vegetarian garbage and other you know, chips and other, you know, food stuff. You know, if you take all kinds of garbage, then you know, no matter how much yoga you do, it will not work because you will contaminate your channels in with the higher speed and higher efficiency than you can clean them with your yoga exercise. And then, so therefore, first yama and niyama. Yama and niyama, you should, you know, ahimsa, satya, asteya, parigraha, you should follow this strict discipline of living very clean life, very pure life. And then after living pure life, you do asana. Asana, you know, clean the channels. And then by cleaning the channels, you can start doing pranayam. And ultimately, pranayam will calm down your chitta. Because again, as I said, and as it is said in this verse, that chitta is interwoven by prana. And because our prana is distorted now, is disturbed, you know, our life affairs are disturbed because exams are coming, and, you know, and our breathing is very uneven, you know, when we're nervous. So our chitta, our mind is also very disturbed. We are very disturbed, chitta is very disturbed, and therefore we don't see the reflections of the soul in the chitta. It is explained here that only when the chitta becomes calm, only when you do this experiment with your chitta, with your consciousness, only when you systematically try to purify your chitta, then at one point you will see the soul. And you will have no trace of a doubt that you are eternal spirit soul. Until this moment, when you see in a very calm and pure chitta the reflection of your soul, you see it very clearly as you see the world around you. Until this time, you will always have doubts. Yeah, it sounds good, but whether it's true or not, I am not so sure. So this verse is explaining the experiential path, experiential procedure, how to realize the soul. And that's exactly what Krishna is trying to explain to us. He says, I am telling you just some theoretical truths, but you will have to realize it yourself. Don't think that if you read second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you already know everything. No, you don't know nothing. You just know something little to start your experiential journey to understand the higher reality, to have more clear perceptual mechanism to understand the truth. You know, what this verse of Mundaka Upanishad explains that, you know, you can only know the truth if you purify your consciousness. Until and unless you purify your consciousness, your mechanism of knowing the truth, you will never be able to understand the higher truth and the higher reality. So any spiritual discipline starts with this ABC purification procedures. You have to follow certain principles: no meat eating, no fish, no eggs, no onion, no garlic, no whatever it is, nothing practically, only rice and dal. And then, you know, you have to restrict your desire to enjoy, not to contaminate your consciousness. But this is what is being explained here, and what I explained is the yogic procedure, is the procedure of yoga. We're also following yoga, the path of yoga, but we're following Bhakti yoga, which is completely different. But the result is the same. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts his Shikshastaka prayers with this statement, Cheto Darpada Marjanam. First, you have to clean the mirror of your consciousness, of your chitta. How we clean the mirror of our consciousness? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So it's a different method. In yoga, you go from down up. You go from your material body because your consciousness is so conditioned and so dependent on the condition of your body. You purify your body, then you purify your life air, then you purify the life air purifies your mind purifies your body purifies your ego purifies your prana will purify your chitta, and then only you will see something. It's a very long process. First, body, how you purify your body by regulating your indriyas, contacting with the objects of this world. This is, and then when the indriyas are purified, the body is purified, then you can purify a little bit your mind and then ego and the consciousness. In Bhakti Yoga, first thing which is said there, who you are Krishna Das. Jivara Swarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. So in this way your ego is purified. You're not student of such and such college, believe it or not. you're, you're not on this grade or that grade or this track or that track. You are Krishna Nitya Das, your eternal servant of Krishna. That's the purification of your ego. You have to be convinced about this. That's the purification of your ego. And of course, you have to live pure life. That's the purification of your body. And then, while chanting mantra, we purify our prana. What is the most important? Instead of doing pranayam, which is not very easy and which is very, how shall I say this? It's a very high procedure in yoga. You cannot start it on the beginning stages because you will only make harm. We immediately try to purify the prana, which penetrates our consciousness by chanting this sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We basically are trying to vibrate the same vibration, the spiritual vibration, through the means of, through pronouncing this, we are trying to connect it with our chitta. We're trying to connect the spiritual vibration with our chitta, and by connecting, by basically merging this together, we purify our chitta. It's a different procedure, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary to Ujjvala Nilamani, he explains that the mechanism of chanting, very important mechanism of chanting. He says, if you take sulfur and if you take mercury, and if you mix sulfur and mercury together, nothing will happen. Even though sulfur and mercury, they have some affinity with each other and they can enter into chemical reaction. But, to make this reaction possible, you have to take pestle and, how you call this? Mortar, yeah. Mortar and pestle. You have to put some mercury and you have to put some sulfur and you start grinding it. And you grind and grind and grind again and again and again. And at one point, by this grinding procedure, the miracle happened. Sulfur and mercury come together and become one substance. So in the same way, our mind is like mercury. Have you seen mercury? Mercury is very, you cannot really catch it. You try to catch it, it's already there. And the same way, our mind is like mercury. You try to catch it, it's already, in Bombay or somewhere else. The mind is chanchalam himanat Krishna. Mind is very, very flickering. It's like this mercury. And then what we do, we try to mix it with this vibration, spiritual vibration of the name of the holy name of Krishna. And the procedure of this is exactly the same as grinding the mercury in the mortar by the pestle. Again and again and again, you have to do it. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Ram. And at one point, when and then you try to bring it back again and again and again, you know, in the same way, like, you know, this mercury. Mercury is just, you know, you have to bring it back into this grinding machine of trying to blend it together, trying to mix it together, trying to interpenetrate one another. And when the spiritual vibration of the holy name penetrates prana, then your consciousness becomes completely pure, completely clean. And that's exactly what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says when he says Cheta Darpana Marjanam. This is the first effect. And it basically means that you forget all the contamination which is there in your consciousness. It basically means that all material desires which you had becomes not very significant. You know, in our conditioned state of being or of living, material desires are very, very strong and prominent. And material desires are very much connected with our ego. You know, I want to be this. I want to have PhD in, you know, in artificial intelligence or in something else. I want to become this. You know, I want to prove the world. You know, every teenager thinks that, you know, nobody else before me made it, but I will make it. You know, somehow or other, I will conquer over this world. No, you will not. Forget it. You will also be defeated. So, you know, Cheta Darpana Marjana means, it's very important. Cheta Darpana Marjana means that your desires become less intense. Your material desires, you know, you look at your material desires and see, what is it? You know, what's nonsense with this? What's so important about it? And then your ego also becomes different. It changes the form. Ego means your ambitions. Ego means your goals, what you want to achieve, what you want to become. Ego basically means self-image. You know, and we all have some, you know, very bombastic self-image. You know, I want to become this or whatever. People, why people want, you know, they like going to these movies, you know, because in these movies, you know, some, I don't know, Shah Rukh Khan, or what's his name? Whatever. You know, he is the hero. He is the image, you know. I want to become like him. He's the model for what I want to follow. But in any case, so, you know, I don't know Indian movie stars. I only know Hema Malini, but she's already in Lok Sabha or in Raj Sabha. She's not a movie star anymore. But the point is that people, they have this image of them, ambitious image. I want to become this, I want to become that, I want to project this. And when you chant Hare Krishna mantra, you realize, I want to become servant of God. It's the highest achievement, possibly be there. It's the happiest state of consciousness. It's the happiest state of my and it's the highest ambition. There's nothing higher than this. And if I realize even a little bit of this, I immediately feel happiness. And if I understand the futility of all these dreams which I have, I become even more happy. You know, because we're actually suffering by all these dreams, by all these completely crazy ideas. You know, we have to do this. No, we don't have to do this. We have to live normal life, and we have to become nice devotees. And ultimately, we have to come to this stage where our mind and the holy name become one. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And Srila Rupa Goswami explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that at this moment when the mind and the holy name become one, when this miracle, the most amazing miracle happens, then the mind is no more material. Now our mind is material, and therefore it's so stubborn and it's so difficult to control, and so many other problems are there. But when it becomes one with the spiritual vibration of the holy name, it becomes completely spiritualized. And Srila Prabhupada gives this example, and of course Rupa Goswami also gave the same example, that how you put the iron within the fire. And even though the fire and the iron are completely different, if you keep it long enough, the iron becomes like fire. It becomes red hot, and it assumes all the qualities of fire. You touch with this iron to anything, it will just be inflamed. So in the same way, our mind will become spiritualized by the contact, by the constant contact of the mind with the spiritual vibration of the holy name. And ultimately, this constant contact of the spiritual vibration of the holy name with the mind is the highest achievement. It's the highest sadhana, and it's the highest sadhya. When you achieve this, then you experience the state of bhava. The state of bhava, the very elevated state of love of God, is only possible when there is no difference between mind and the holy name. Until the difference is there, bheda is there, the gap is there between the two, until they remain separate, we're still in the beginning stages of our spiritual journey. But when this interaction becomes complete, then the mind takes completely different nature, and in this clean mind you see the image of yourself very clear. You understand who you are, you understand your spiritual functions, you understand your eternal nature, who you are eternally, not temporary in this world, but in your eternal spiritual nature. And you understand the image of God. You see the image of God reflected in the same chitta. Therefore, therefore chitta is called the place where the perfection is happening. Chitta is a very important mechanism given to us by God, because when it is contaminated, it only can lead us into this journey in this material world where we can see all the distorted images of ourselves. But as soon as it is clean, it reflects the real image of us, and it reflects the image of God. And we see very clearly God reflected in our chitta. That's the main quality of chitta, which is explained in 26th chapter of the 3rd canto by Kapila Dev, that Bhagavan Bimba Grahitva. This is the main quality of chitta. It can catch the image of Bhagavan and maintain this. And therefore, in this verse, it is said, Yasmin Vishuddhi Vibhavat Esha Atma. At the moment when your chitta becomes Vishuddhi, completely clean, not just Shuddhi, but Vishuddhi, especially clean, Visheshataya Shuddhi, when it becomes completely 100% clean, then you'll see your Atma. So this verse basically says, which Prabhupada put in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, is that you have to try to understand the spiritual nature of yourself. Eshor Nuratma Chetaso Veditebhya. By your mind. How? By cleaning the mind. And when the mind is completely clean, then you realize the nature of the soul, and you will realize the nature of the super soul, And to clean the heart, to clean the mind, to clean chitta, you have to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So this is my scientific presentation of Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Any questions? Yes.
First half of the lecture, you were telling us about how in the different yogic processes we clean the prana and therefore bring the chitta to a sattvic state by different yoga poses. But in Bhakti Maharaj, we don't focus so much on doing yoga.
You can do yoga. Prabhupada's one disciple asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, shall we do yoga? Prabhupada says, yes, you can do yoga, but you can also do jogging. So Prabhupada was not very specific and was not very emphatic about this. But one thing is very clear, is that you have to take care of your body by doing some exercise. Because if you don't do this, the channels of your body will be clogged. They will be blocked. So, but there are so many different methods of doing this. Yoga is, of course, very nice and beautiful method. And there are this, Qigong and this and that. So many different methods are there. So we're not very particular about this because we're going not from this end, not from bottom up. We're going from up down. So when our consciousness is clean, then our body is also clean. Because the main source of contamination of the body is contaminated mind. When the mind is contaminated, we have cravings for all kinds of garbage food and we do all kinds of sinful activities which ultimately contaminate the body. So we come from this end. We try to purify the consciousness. When the consciousness is pure, then the body will become pure. But we have to take care of the body. We have to have some common sense. It means we have to do some exercise, but not necessarily yoga. I do yoga. I do yoga every day, more than 1 hour. But I like yoga. I can show you some postures if you want. But it's not compulsory. It's not necessary because the very process is different.
In your talk, you're mentioning that some millionaires want to become immortal. They want to stay long. But we also see other side that people want to die. Committing suicide. So recently, yesterday, one boy jumped on the building.
Really? In Manipur.
So where that is coming from?
Yeah, okay. So it's normal people don't do this. It's the signs of psychic disease and the enormous stress which we experience, especially, I know a little bit Indian educational system. It's very stressful. It's extremely stressful. So if the stress becomes chronic, and then the stress turns into depression. And when depression takes place, it's a disease. It's a psychic disease, psychiatrical disease. And then, the desire to live, which is normal for every normal human being, not only human being, every living entity wants to live. This will to live is everywhere. It becomes distorted. But basically what we have, due to the stress, the chitta becomes so distorted and contaminated. And it becomes so uncomfortable place, because we live not in the body, we live in the mind. And when the mind becomes so depressed, it becomes very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to live in such mind. Like when we come to some, you know, material environment which is very uncomfortable, dirty, and gloomy. We want to leave this environment as soon as possible. In the same way, when our room of our consciousness, of our mind, becomes dirty and gloomy, the soul wants to leave it. So the desire somehow or other, it's unbearable pain to be constantly, because you are doomed to be 24 hours a day within your mind. And the only way to make this a happy, living is to clean the mind, is to make mind very nice place to live. But when you, hopelessly went to this condition, when you are in this depressed, gloomy state of mind, then you do it. But it's abnormal. It's not normal. And it's a result of too much stress, of abnormal stress. But normally people want to live eternally. Why? Because the soul is eternal. And because people don't understand the nature of the soul, they try to somehow or other reproduce the material. They want to make this body eternal, or they want to make somehow or other the mind eternal. But, body is not eternal, mind is always changeable. But the soul is eternal, we're already eternal. And this desire to become, the quest for immortality, the Upanishad says, or child, they call the people child of immortality. We're all children of immortality. We're all children of this immortal state, which is full of bliss. So we deserve to be immortal. The death is a punishment. Death is actually a mistake. It's our mistake, and we have to realize how we are immortal, and this is what we can do by the process of yoga, by studying Bhagavad Gita and associating with people who know Bhagavad Gita and who realize Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Chitta is material. Chitta is the most subtle material element within our body. So it is explained in Sankhya of Kapila Dev. Then the first element which appears after pradhana, which is very balanced state of three modes of material nature. When the balance is disturbed by kala, by eternal time, then the first element is Mahatattva. Mahatattva in the universal scale becomes chitta in our body. So it's the same. It's material, but it's the most subtle, and it's the most sattvic. Chitta is sattvic. Ahankara, ego, is tamasic, and prana, sutra tattva, is rajasic. So these three tattvas, they are the foundational tattvas of our conditioned being. Sattvic chitta, rajasic prana, sutra tattva, and tamasic ahankara tattva. So mahatattva, sutra tattva, and ahankara tattva, these three together, they from them the rest of the world produced. The space, the sound, everything else is coming from this ahankara tattva, which is tamasic by nature. Chitta was in the heart, and chitta is actually, you can say that chitta is our memory. Chitta is like hard drive in the computer. The hard drive is still material. It's the heart hardware of the hard drive. So everything is stored in this hard drive. Some of the things are more like structured, and some of the things are very, chaotic there. And to some of the things you don't even have access because you forgot. So many files are there, you already forgot about them. So there are conscious mind, subconscious mind. The chitta is the sum total. It's the storage of all the memories. And mind, the conscious mind which we have, is something which thinks. We think, we make some concepts, and desires are there. This I like, this I don't like. This is in the mind. So the mind is just a function of chitta. Ultimately, the consciousness, conditioned consciousness of a living entity is ensured or is provided by the chitta, which has this reflective ability. But ahankara is the part of the chitta, contaminating chitta. Buddhi is the rajasic part of the chitta. Mind is sattvic part of the chitta. But it's all chitta. It's functions of the chitta. So chitta is, and therefore in yoga they don't do this discrimination. In yoga, Patanjali Muni in Yoga Sutra says, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. What is the goal of yoga? To clean chitta. And clean chitta means when you clean chitta, there is nothing else, only chitta. There is no ahankar, there is no manas, there is no buddhi. And clean chitta means very pure, clean, exact, correct, reflective ability to reflect the truth. Like clean water. In a clean water, you can see the reflection of the reality very clearly. There is no distortion. But when the water is distorted, then the reflection is also distorted. When our mind or our chitta is distorted, then also we get very distorted reflection of the reality, not real.
As you told us, what's real, what's not. There are many people who are not clear or who do not have a higher plane of conscience or consciousness. And is it required? Do they require a higher plane of consciousness to go to heaven? If not, why? And what do you think? Because there are many religions that do have, like, that does not have any jurisdiction on you have to eat veg, you cannot eat garlic or onion or something like that. So, I mean, yeah. So, but do you require a higher consciousness to go to the?
See, this very question betrays the different approach to spirituality. You can approach spirituality from religious point of view. And religious point of view basically means, you should do this, you should not do this. If you do this, you will go to heaven. If you don't do this, you will go to hell. And then, of course, there are special concessions. If you're a rich person and you pay especially big donation, then you go to hell no matter what you do. It's a religious conception which is completely unscientific. It has nothing to do with science of consciousness. The science of consciousness very clearly says that environment in which you exist is the creation of your mind. If your mind is hellish, you will live in hell. It doesn't matter how this hell called. This hell can be called Manipal, this hell can be called Moscow, this hell can be called Narak. Hell is hell, because your environment is created by your mind. If some people have hellish mind, no matter where they are, they create environment which is very hellish, very dirty, very, low class, and so many other things are there. And if your mind is clean, if your consciousness is clean, then your environment also becomes clean. And if you have dirty consciousness and you are somehow or other put in a clean environment, two things can happen. Most probably, one thing, this clean environment will gradually purify your consciousness. That's possible. But most probably, by your contaminated consciousness, you will contaminate your environment. And you will make it very conducive for you to live in this environment. There was a very beautiful real story in New York. New York is a very dirty city. Very dirty. I've been there many times. So there was a bus station, and the bus station in New York was a especially dirty place. And all these people who are bums, who don't have any place to live, with all the garbage which they have, and they have, they emanate bad smell. They used to come to this New York city bus station, and somehow and you couldn't drive them from there. They were living there, they were thriving there, and many times the authorities of this bus station, they were trying to clean up the bus station from all these bumps, but they would inevitably be attracted again to this place and flock again, and it never worked. So one genius manager of this bus station decided to have a trick, and he started having beautiful classical music in the bus station. And all the bums, they just ran away from this place because it was not conducive to their consciousness. It was very contrary to the state of their consciousness. So when we're talking about religion, the religion says, yes, somehow or other, if you follow this by miracle, you will go to heaven or to hell. Spiritual science says you work on your consciousness. And if your consciousness becomes clean, your destination will also become the place which is very clean and beautiful. And this clean and beautiful place, eternal place, is called Vaikuntha. If you go a little lower down, it may be called heaven or whatever it is. But you will only get where you deserve to go. And it doesn't matter how much donation you paid or whatever. What matters is how clean is your consciousness. So there's only one way, so there's no point to ask this question, because if you want to go to higher place, you have to have higher consciousness. As much as if you want to go to moon, or if you want to go to sun, can you go to sun in this body? You can go to sun in this body, but it will not last long, right? You have to have fiery body. You have to have the body which has the same constitution or the same condition as the sun. Only then you can be in the sun planet. So if you want to go to heaven, you have to have heavenly mind, heavenly consciousness. There is no other way. If you want to go to lower place, you have to lower your consciousness. Very simple. If you want to go to higher place, you just have to purify and elevate your consciousness. Simple. And very scientific. Yeah. Say it again. I don't. Yeah. Yeah. Vasanas and samskaras reside in chitta. Chitta itself is very clear, but vasanas and samskaras, like, the hard drive in your computer, it has capacity to keep all these files, little files in it. So vasanas and samskaras are these files in your hard drive. But they're not manifested from the chitta. Chitta is just the adhikaran. It's the holding place. It's the substratum for the vasanas and samskaras. Vasanas and samskaras are basically contamination on the chitta. And when we say chitta darpana varjanam, we mean that the chitta will be cleaned, will be cleansed from all these vasanas and samskaras. And therefore, those people who have clean consciousness, clean chitta, they don't have karma, because vasanas and samskaras is our karma. But when our chitta is clean, no karma anymore, no dependence on all these vasanas and samskaras. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.